This is the second video of the series in which we talk about the pillars of the rulers. Here we focus on the topic of merchants, also known as koopman. Commerce is an economic backbone of a state. No state has ever existed that could support itself for perpetuity on its own like any closed ecological system would claim to do. The lack of trade at the regional and a global stage can result in isolation, and isolated powers do not last very long. A favorable commerce is the only way to ensure that the state maintains its status among the other nations and their ruling elites. This favorableness was predicated on the fact that a nation cannot import more than it can export in order to maintain its reserves of precious metals. There is also an economic theory dedicated to this idea. It's called the theory of mercantilism. Commerce generally means that the goods, raw materials, or commodities that are abundant in one nation can be exported to the nations that have a shortage of those, and vice versa. This necessitated the class of people that could undertake this endeavor. The risks were high, but the rewards were even higher. The social status of a merchant was not uniform across all civilizations throughout the history. Merchants across Europe and Asia never gained social status until the modern age. But the merchants from Middle East did relish a status which was appropriate as per their wealth. The reason for this difference in treatment arose from the fact that merchants dealt with money. Money was considered a necessary evil by the European and Asian societies, and so was the necessity of a merchant. The fact that merchants traded goods is commonly known, but we are not here to discuss which spices did merchants traded. Our interest lies in the financial aspect of mercantilism. It is the dealings with finances that earned the merchants a seat in the courtroom despite a rough start. No one knows where this journey to power began for a merchant, but we can look at the circumstantial evidence to determine the causes of this advancement. We all know that merchants traded across the regions which no one wanted to traverse, at least not without the protection of the local rulers and their armies. The chances of getting robbed by the pirates at best or getting slaughtered at worst always haunted the merchants. As I mentioned earlier, that risks were high, but looking at the rewards, it was worth it. One successful trading trip could have been a game changer for the merchants who were venturing into it for the first time. In business, it's all about margin, but the merchants did not sit back to assume all the risks of traveling with the goods, commodities, only to be robbed by pirates. They stepped up their game. They banded together to form caravans, as it is strength in numbers. They hired the private armies to defend their caravans. Sometimes the merchants of higher prominence traveled with their own private armies, spy networks, and delivered personal gifts for the lords who controlled the areas in the route. For pirates, it kept getting harder to raid the heavily guarded caravans, especially for the goods that require further transportation. For the pirates, the profit worth a risk was in raid for the caravans carrying gold or currencies that merchants earned after the trade was completed. Merchants suffered this problem, despite the armies guarding the caravans. It was almost like a gamble, and commerce should not and cannot be a gamble. After all, it results in a loss just by probability itself. We must have heard of an old saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Merchants soon had to invent a way around this nuisance of a problem. They observed that the trade is never one way. It is both ways, the merchants on both sides of the export between two regions had to take their payments back home after the trade was complete. They invented the system in which the merchants deposited the earnings at the local branch of an organization, and the very same organization would pay them when they arrived at their hometown. Payments were guaranteed as there was little to no risk involved. They created money transfer system just like the Bank of International Settlements. This invention revolutionized commerce between the nations, and soon the merchants that participated in the formation of this system became wealthier than some rulers. Wealth of a ruler came from the taxes collected, but it was a liability in some ways. Also, you can only tax so much in a nation with limited subjects. But the money transfer relied on the endless trade that existed between the nations. At this point, it was not about trade of commodities. They had started trading money itself. I always ask myself what the money is. My observation and understanding of the monetary system led me to the conclusion that money is effort in the form of currency. It is also a way to preserve one's effort for the future. We can work today and get paid for our effort. We can then use that payment to buy efforts of other people for the things that we are not skilled at. Merchants found a way to bank on the effort by selling the idea to people that they can save their hard-earned money with them for the peace of their mind. They further went on to rent that effort in the form of money to make more effort without putting any effort. It was called usury and is part of the reason that merchants never earned the status in some civilizations. The reason why some civilizations perceived usury, or in general the practice of mercantilism, as a not so honored profession is beyond this video. But I will try to cover it in the future videos as I delve into the ruling structure of various regions of the world. As always, the answer is not so simple and straightforward. Due to the invention of this financial practice, some merchants grew their wealth to the point that they started profiting by lending their assets, which was mostly in the form of gold. Lending money to average people had its limits. There was not enough money to be made, but they had another idea in mind. History of the nations is filled with conflicts and incompetent rulers. Wherever there was a mismanaged balance sheet due to misfortune or pure neglect, there was a merchant to finance the dealings of the state and cover the deficits. This act did not arise from the generous heart of the merchants, whose existence relied on mere profits. Sometimes I think that the rulers saw merchants as challengers to their own power. After all, the goal of any aspirant ruler is the complete control of the state. When crown owes money to the merchant, we know who truly rules. There have been instances throughout the history that the merchant families took power out of the hand of the rulers of a nation. Our current global system is currently influenced and controlled by the mercantile class that took the power out of the hands of the old rulers of Europe, Asia, and Middle East. Anyone with a keen eye into politics can testify to how much control multinational corporations have on any nation's politics. Mercantilism is an advocate of globalism, something we saw unfold at an alarming rate prior to slowing down of things, if you know what I mean. This is the reason that any of our old social, economic, and moral systems are openly challenged, and a consistent effort is made to replace those systems with something that works in favor of consumption, debt, and lack of ownership. As humans, we have seen a great improvement in the living standards due to the transfer of goods, innovation in technology, and automation, which in a way has been hijacked but improved by the merchant class to their benefits. We are also at the cusp of paying the price by over-exploiting our biosphere, inflating our national debt, expanding unfunded liabilities, accepting the moral degradation of our society. I don't mind being a consumer. I want to be a fully informed one. I can go at lengths to cover this topic, but I have to keep this video short because of time constraints. In my next video, I will talk about the warrior and its role in shaping the world as we see it. I want to thank my subscribers for their subscription. I hope this channel makes your YouTube journey entertaining and informative. Creating content takes time and effort. Please like and subscribe if you find my content valuable. I'm your humbled host for Whispers of Veracity. Thanks for listening to me.